Don't you ever want to do anything exciting?
Like what?
I want a real adventure. We can go anywhere we want in the whole galaxy.
That was amazing!
Yeah.
You can see grand adventures even in a rotten galaxy like this.
We are not pirates!
Keep your blaster ready. Oh, we're pirates.
Yeah.
This is the Rebel Force Radio Skeleton Crew After Show.
Let's go!
All right, we are at the halfway point. Skeleton Crew. Halfway through the adventure. And we got some new characters this week. And what I think, is a glimpse at least of what may have been the fate of the other 8 planets, these lost systems. How did At Attin manage to survive, and why did it survive? And the aftermath on these other planets, they've sort of devolved, at least using this one as an example, they've sort of devolved into almost like Lord of the Flies kind of environment with warring factions and child soldiers and all that. We'll be breaking it all down for you this week on the Rebel Force Radio Skeleton Crew After Show. Great to be with you. It's the holiday season, and what better time to just gather around our 21st century fireplace. You can't even call it a TV anymore. It's a screen. It's a screen. You sit around with the family and watch a great show like Skeleton Crew, and then hop on over to the other screen and watch Rebel Force Radio doing our after show thing. So grateful to be with you all. Thanks to everyone joining us live. If you haven't joined us live, we are here every week on YouTube streaming the after show live on Wednesdays. There's a little bit of scheduling changes coming up, but we'll get into all that later. But grateful to be with you. Thanks so much for hanging with us. If you're new to the program, and introductions may be in order, my name is Jason. And with me, as always, my good friend and yours from Chicago, Jimmy Mack.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Star Wars fans.
A very festive Jimmy Mack. Look at that. If you're not watching, you don't see the beautiful Christmas tree behind Jimmy Mack and adorned, I believe, exclusively with Star Wars ornaments.
Oh, nothing but. Kind of hard to make out here on the video, but I shot a video of my Christmas tree a couple years ago. You can go look at that on YouTube instead. There's some new things in there, but it's mostly the same.
Try to do a little zoom here. I can kind of zoom in, see what I can find there.
No, they have to go to watch the video.
You're not going to share. You're not going to share today. No. I see how you're going to be. All right, fine.
Hold my hand up and block your shot. I'm just going to do the rest of the show like this.
Just out of spite.
I've been meaning to take my shirt off, and All right, enough. Can't say I remember no Rebel Force Radio.
Oh, yeah.
Now that we got pirate talk out of the way, I'm surprised I've made it up to this point in the Skeleton Crew after show run without leaning heavily on a pirate voice at some point. Because I find once I start doing it, I can't stop.
I think we save that for the season finale. We'll just do the whole after show in pirate ease.
Yes. All right. So a few things to say. Screen. Look, I'm taking up the whole screen. You brought up screens in your intro. Mm-hmm. And I got to say, I remember something I took note of when I was watching all of the PR that John Watts and Christopher Ford were doing for Skeleton Crew. And Christopher Ford, he's a really good producer because his director kept referring to working in television while working in television. And every time he'd say that, Chris Ford would jump in and say, streaming. Yeah, they want to keep him on track. And I guess the PR department really wants to make that distinction between streaming and television. But it's all the same to me, actually.
Yeah, same.
All right.
Yes.
I don't want to look at just me the whole show. Why is this happening?
Well, are you new to the show? I always just put it on you right after I introduce you. You rap for a few seconds, and then it comes, then I do the double shot.
All right. Well, my rap is over. So
You're-
double shot. We're doing the double shot, baby.
Okay,
Double shot
we're double
bacon.
shot. Someone just said they can't believe Swank is putting a cap over his perfectly coiffed hair. I know Jimmy Mack is typically, of the two of us, he's more apt to wear a ball cap than I am. But I'm on vacation mode, guys. I am out of the day job till the end of the year. So
No kidding.
I'm not. You know, it's a lot of work, especially as I'm growing the hair out a little bit. So ball cap it is right now. Ball cap,
All right, well,
Star
good
Wars
for you.
tee. So anyway, okay, let's get to it. Let's start. We've got the tail of the tape here for this week's episode. Jim, you wanna give the name of it again with that beautiful pirate brogue you got?
Can't say I remember no At Attin.
Yeah,
But
now
he stutters every time he says it. He kind of stutters. He goes, can't say.
Yeah.
It's that.
Because
that
he's
C.
lying. Because he's lying.
say. Can't say I remember no Attin.
Yeah,
All
he's
right.
a
I
bit
wonder
of
if
a
they can-
stuttering droid. He is a stuttering droid, you know. You know what they would call him at Goodfellas, stuttering, but no. But he in Star Wars, he's a stuttering droid. Can't say I remember no At Attin, directed by Daniel Kwan and Daniel Shiner. Those are the Daniels who directed the Academy Award-winning film Everything Everywhere All at Once and got us Gen Xers reintroduced to one Ki-Hu Kwan, who was just everywhere during the promotion of that film, having a ball at all the award shows, gave us that great reunion between him and Harrison Ford at the Oscars. Written, of course, by Christopher Ford and John Watts, and this episode came in at about 32 minutes, almost on the dot, if you don't count those end credits. So there you go. Jim, as I said, episode 4, this is usually the turning point in these series. You get to episode 4, playtime is over, exposition is over. Now it's time to really get into the central questions, start answering some questions and things like that. And as I said in the intro, you know, we are starting to get some detail about perhaps the fate of these planets and obviously what was left in the aftermath. And I think we can just assume that given what clues we've have in this episode, that At Attin is very special and very lucky, because it seems like, at least we can assume, that all the other planets have met a much worse fate than just being lost to the galaxy.
Yeah, and I'm sure we're going to figure out why exactly that is. Right now, I'm leaning toward pirates plundering all the planets and completely wiping out the civilizations there. And that's all I got to go on, though. I mean,
Yeah,
who knows?
it does seem like it. Did it feel like bigger destruction to you than just pirate plundering? I mean, Jod talks about how the air tastes of ash, and Neel is talking about how his trunk is full of ash. It just feels like maybe it's more devastation than pirates. But then again, look, we saw in Mandalorian, pirates have massive starships that would have, pretty bad capability as far as creating wide destruction on a planet. So I don't know if I'm using my Earthbound ideas of pirates, and applying that to Star Wars pirates, but the devastation on At Attin seemed pretty extensive.
Yeah, definitely. And it makes you wonder, like you said, Jason, are the pirates capable of pulling off this level of destruction? Well, maybe this has something to do with that great work they were talking about. And maybe the great work went south on all of these planets. Now they're down to one final planet that's hidden away behind the barrier, and they're still trying to make the great work work. But this planet was called At Attin. And do you think that's a shout out to Akron, Ohio?
My ears did perk up. I got to say, it's spelled very differently, but At Attin is about 20 miles north of me. They spell it differently. I don't know. I would, it's but they're all at something. There's like at A2, at Akron, At Attin, and that in and of itself is interesting. Almost as if the planets are named so similarly. Was that a layer in the whole effort to obfuscate, where these planets are, what they are, the fact that they're named so similarly? It just seems like the whole everything about these planets, everything we learn about them is confusing. And then you wonder, is that by design?
Yeah, all at. I wonder if at stands for something. It's code for something. It means something. But you're right. They're all very similar. At Akron, at Canton, at Cleveland. It's all of Ohio. At
Yeah, that's
Toledo. Not quite. Not quite.
Well, we do have, there's with this show, what I've noticed is the storytelling here, and I don't mean this as a criticism at all, because I actually think that it's a breath of fresh air, considering how much bigger these other shows' eyes were than their stomachs. You know that old expression, your eyes are bigger than your stomach. They just tried to bite off so much. This show doesn't. It has these meaty little bites, but I feel like each episode gives you some sort of satisfaction, some sort of resolution. It takes you to the next step in the journey. So it's very linear, and I'm hesitating to use the word simple, but it does feel like a simpler, more straightforward form of storytelling. Now that we're all the way into episode 4, I think since we're here, Jim, halfway through, we can assume that the pacing, the tone, the style is going to remain consistent from here on out. And so I think we're dealing with a known quantity at this point of what the show is, what it's trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I don't, especially after having an episode directed by the Daniels. They're known for really visual, outrageous presentation. And, this seemed like this episode fit in just fine with the other 3. As a matter of fact, despite having different directors for each episode, a couple of them double up, but it's a different director for each episode. I don't think there's a director who directed 2 consecutive. Maybe David Lowery did, now that I think of it. Why am I even wondering? I have the damn list right in front of me here. Yeah, David Lowery did direct episodes 2 and 3.
2 and 3.
So you'd understand. Yeah, and John Watts directed the first one, which obviously he, as the showrunner, is setting the pace for how he wants this series to flow. And David Lowery picked up that ball and very consistently turned in 2 episodes. And now the Daniels, who, like I said, are known for being a little bit outside the box and a little fast-paced and intense, they seem to fit right into the mold of this show.
It's almost
They
as
seem to
if
fit right in.
the directors aren't, and the Daniels, my God, they don't need to make any apologies. They're Oscar-winning directors, so at least their film won I don't believe, did they win the Oscars for the direction? I don't know if they won. I don't think they did, but the film won. So they don't. The point is that they're bona fide filmmakers. They're awarded filmmakers, but they're humble enough to come into this and make it fit instead of it being, it's going to be our vision. It's going to be our way of telling a Star Wars. So I do appreciate that quite a bit.
Hey, they did. They won for Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Screenplay.
Oh, that's a
At
sweet.
least I think they did.
Full disclosure, guys, I haven't really paid attention to the Oscars in a long time. So unless there's a Star Wars alum being given a tribute or something, I kind of piece out of the Oscars. But so Everything Everywhere All at Once was quite the sweep at the Oscars. And these guys are again, they could come in and they could throw their weight around, but this did not feel like they were doing that. In fact, I could watch this show, each episode up to what we've seen so far, and if you would have told me it was the same director throughout, I'd have believed you. I don't think they're. You. Yeah, I like the consistency.
I do too. Consistency. I do too. Definitely. Star Wars has needed a little bit of consistency lately with all these vastly different series, and prior to the series, the films. We need some consistency in Star Wars. Again, I'll repeat it. I don't need to see different takes on Star Wars. Like, oh, this one is this kind of Star Wars, and that one is that kind of Star Wars. I wish they would just find a sweet spot and stick to that instead of shaking the boat, rocking the boat every time they release something new. A little bit of consistency. It just seems like they're throwing everything against the wall to see if anything sticks. But they need to just find a path.
It's funny to me that they even think that they need to. Like, why are they putting that extra pressure on themselves to reinvent the wheel and infuse it with something else when they should just be feeling the pressure of making a great Star Wars story? And I'm sure they feel that as well. But I think they've made, I think with this show, for me, they've made a really interesting story that keeps my interest, keeps me guessing, but it doesn't challenge me to the point where I get frustrated, annoyed, and be like, you know what, screw you and all your questions and your mysteries and all this. Like, there's enough of a payoff, I feel, in each episode that I don't feel that I'm being led astray all the time. I think very much of this can be taken at face value. But let's remember how we got here with this particular this planet at Attin. So Kim, the little bird owl creature, did pull up these coordinates, did give these, and then Jod grabbed them, and they shot into hyperspace, and they end up at Attin. As they're approaching the planet, they've got what looks to be a similar kind of green fog mist, so they have no reason not to believe that this is at Attin. They can actually see homes as they're entering the atmosphere of the planet. They think it's at Attin.
Did you catch what Jod said as they were approaching? He said, Renaud's ghost. I can't believe it, at Attin. And I'm like, Renaud's ghost.
I didn't notice.
So immediately I start looking up Renaud, and I can't find anything about it, existing prior in Star Wars. Who is this Renaud's ghost? I was thinking maybe it's a callback to some obscure comic book or something. But Stephen Stanton came to the rescue and explained that Renaud's is a tribute. Renaud, spelled backwards, is Donner. And Richard Donner was the director of The Goonies.
Right.
So that's a little Easter egg shout out to Richard Donner. I don't know how Stanton knew this. I thought for sure, he must have gotten this from StarWars.com or something in their episode guide. And I looked it up and I didn't see it. But Stephen Stanton had the scoop. Renaud's Ghost is a tribute to Richard Donner.
Richard Donner, great director, also directed the first Superman movie with Christopher Reeve, and then almost finished directing the second Superman movie that was taken from him. And but it's relevant again, Jim, because there is obviously Donner nostalgia in this show. Everyone's waiting for the big teaser trailer that's going to come out this week for the new Superman movie, and they're really playing up the sort of Richard Donner nostalgia with the familiar John Williams musical cues and the teases that have been released. So Richard Donner, still a relevant figure for a lot of filmmakers and creatives that grew up in that era, from Star Wars to Superman. But anyway, so yeah, they get to this planet because of the coordinates that were given to them by Kim. They show up, and I got to be honest, I took it very literally at first when they were walking around the house and they saw the tree and the spiral staircase. I was like, wait a minute, this is the Upside Down from Stranger Things. This is an alternate universe. This is an alternate version of At Attin. I really believe they were on At Attin until it was revealed that it was at Attin. And so I was like, they said it was going to have a Stranger Things vibe. So boy, are we going to open the door to alternate dimensions and things like that, alternate realities. But no, it's just the fact that the everything from the architecture down to the way the playground was laid out, the buildings, the schools, everything on At Attin is the same as what it is on At Attin. And I think by extension, we can just assume that all of these planets, these 9, were all somehow the same.
Yeah, there's some sort of standardized way of laying this out, even down to the individual homes. Or maybe, Jason, maybe you're right. Maybe this does represent something maybe a little bit more significant than just carbon copy construction. Maybe these are planets, there's the 9 of them that are behind this barrier. And we know they're working on something called the Great Work. Maybe these other planets are failed attempts at the Great Work. And so they just keep moving on to another planet, or they have a way of creating new planets behind the barrier. And it just keeps like splitting apart like an atom, it keeps.
Oh, that's
I mean,
interesting that they're created.
That's
that
me
they
going
could be
way out there.
Yeah, but I mean, it's possible, that they were they were doing this. So, the Great Work and all of that seems to be. Yeah, the question is, what caused the destruction? You were saying earlier. Well, it's sort of assumed that pirates have found throughout time each one of these planets that were time capsules and had currency and things that were of incredible value because they were essentially frozen in time. So one by one, they've been perhaps discovered and plundered and exploited by pirates, with the exception of At Attin. And then we find out in this episode that, and this is something that I could kick myself that I didn't bring up last week, but one of the things we haven't really talked about is the fact that, SM-33 and that ship and that captain all ended up on At Attin. So they did find it.
Right.
So they did find it. And then that's kind of brought full circle in this episode as SM-33 is forced at the end to admit to the kids and to Jod through a lot of coaxing by Fern, Captain Fern, to recall his memory and spill the beans. But he doesn't really spill the beans. It just triggers an old command that his captain gave him, which was, if anybody comes around asking questions about At Attin, you rip them limb from limb.
Right. So why was the ship on At Attin? Why was the ship buried on At Attin? How old is the ship? How old is SM-33? It seems to me they're ancient.
The pirates
SM-33
are all skeletons, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I found it interesting, too, when John came down the boarding ramp onto At Attin, and he thought the planet's air tasted like smoke and ash, and he said, like the planet I'm from. So Jod could be from one of these jewel planets as well. Maybe he was involved as a kid with this pirate business, with the ship being buried and stuff, and he fell in with these pirates somehow. Some others speculate, he was on the run during Order 66 and just was adopted by pirates or something, and he had some enforceability without being trained in the Force, in the ways of the Force. He's still able to use it a little bit.
Yeah, he would be. You could imagine him being discovered by pirates. They're not going to keep anyone around that isn't useful. So I'm sure that if he thought that, using these abilities to sort of give him some utility to the pirate captain, that's something he was going to do, and that's something that the pirates would exploit. So it definitely kind of fits sort of how he might have survived, being hidden amongst pirates. That's a pretty great place to hide, because who's gonna mess around with pirates? But so SM-33 freaks out. He's kind of put out to, I don't know really where they can go from here with him. They're obviously going to have to restrain him, wake him up, try to figure some way. Maybe KB will come up with some sort of solution. I think she kind of mutters something at some point about reprogramming or something she might be able to do. But
yeah, and she was messing with that eye socket of his toward the end of the episode, right before the droid sort of snapped and was attacking the kids. As the camera panned over to him, she was poking around his eye. Also, there's that little rat in his eye. And I noticed that when SM-33 walked in on Jod as he was going through the kids' belongings, and found their credits and everything. And 33 was acting strange. And right at the moment when it appeared he began to recall At Attin, it started to come back to him. That little rat poked his head out of his eye.
Yes.
And then went back in, and then all of a sudden he repeated that line. I don't recall. I don't remember no At Attin.
Yes.
No wonder he stutters. I'm stuttering trying to say it. I'm not even a droid.
Yeah, I noticed that too. That it's almost like the little rat or whatever is sort of like his version of a tick. Like, I mean, I don't mean like a bug tick. I mean like an affectation of physical tick. Every time he starts to talk about At Attin or to give some information that might be of value to the crew, that little rat picks its, puts its head out, and then he flips out. So that could be something there. What would be bizarre? What if that's the captain?
Well,
what if that little rat?
It is Star Wars. I mean, but with Fern then assuming command of the ship, I think the little rat would fire something in the microprocessors in the droid's head to prevent her from doing that.
Yeah. And I also feel that the captain would have to be dead, or at least SM-33 would have to really believe the captain was dead for him to accept a new captain of the ship.
Right.
But it is fun to think about. Be like the old Uber Gascon.
Playing. I don't think it's a game he's playing. I think it is specifically his programming, and his programming gets triggered by all kind of things.
Yeah.
So he completely snaps at the end, and that was interesting. That was it. There was. I'll get into my thoughts about the way they build tension and refuse the audience any payoff in this episode. But that moment when the droid started attacking the kids, that actually did present a legitimate moment filled with tension. But of course, all Jod has to do is hit the off switch on the back of the droid, and the tension is resolved. And it got me thinking about that kill switch. The kids really don't have any upper hand with Jod. Up into this moment, I thought they did because of the droid. The droid was acting as an enforcer for the kids. And if Jod stepped out of line, all the kids had to do was look at the droid, and the droid would take care of it. But now we know that Jod can simply turn the droid off. So what upper hand do the kids have with Jod anymore? I mean, outside of being knowledgeable of their own home planet, which Jod desperately wants to get to so he can score the reward, or score the treasure, I should say.
I think that Jod
he can do that without the kids. He can do it without the kids, though, is what I'm saying. He can fly the ship.
Can he, though? But what about
he can
when
turn the droid off?
But what about when he gets to At Attin? Do you think he's got to be thinking that I'm going to return these kids to this planet? I'm going to be a hero.
Oh, okay.
And they'll legitimize his presence on the planet, so then he can, fill up and hit with his booty and take off. I think that might be possibly what he's thinking, but he's definitely manipulating a lot of this, down to the point where when he's comes back to get the kids from the troikas. I'm thinking of all these scenarios in my head about how did he do this? Was it through fantastic diplomacy. What did he promise these guys? And the reality was he just bought them off. He bought the other faction off with those credits that are so coveted, and really got the kids on the radar of the pirates to begin with. So, and Fern picks up on it, and this is what's really kind of fun and interesting about the character of Jod, is that despite the fact that, I won't want to say cowardly, but he took the easy way out. He just bought his way out of the situation. The fact is he still did come back for him. Neel and Wim, they get it. Fern kind of did, but then was like, well, wait a minute. You didn't really, this wasn't bravery. You just took the money that you stole from Wim and basically bought your freedom and the Eopes to make peace between these. Well, I don't think he made peace between the two warring factions, but at least something to trade to get the kids.
Right. Yeah, it's still maybe just is more a reflection of the guys. He has at least heart. I think the kids win people over really fast in this show. Like for example, the general's daughter, Hannah.
Yeah.
She came across them and immediately took them under her wing and presented them to her father. And again, you feel the tension slowly building. You feel like there's going to be some conflict here with General Strix, I think his name was.
Yeah.
And the kids. And then he just, he drops the aggression and just sort of holds his hand out, hey, welcome. Welcome.
He does it fairly quickly. He gets the sense, well, there's a couple of things. One, what I thought where this was going was some sort of Oliver Twist sort of story where he was sort of the Fagin character, and he had all of these orphans and kids that were, I thought they were going to turn out to be thieves or, something along those lines. But then it became sort of this, more of this, he's a warlord. He's got the daughter. He's the leader of this group. There are adults. Because that's where I thought they were going with this, is the same place as Wim. Wim thought that this was going to turn out to be some battle of kids versus adults, and that turned out not to be the case.
They even start to kind of build up on that a little bit. Because Wim wonders right away if Hannah represents an army of kids fighting adults for control of the planet.
Right.
That's his imagination and running wild, probably based on a story he must have read at some point. Maybe it was the Hunger Games or something. I don't know.
Oh, very Hunger Games, I thought. Yeah. Yeah.
But right away, so you're kind of thinking to yourself, oh, it's going to be kids versus adults. This is great. And the kids are going to get thrown into some legitimate battle. And so they meet General Strix, and he's their leader. And he says at Attin, they treat children as adults. And then he holds his hand out, instantly helpful, which just kills the drama. The kids should have had to earn the respect of the Troik before they took them in. That's my opinion. It just felt like you could feel this tension building, and it's just like, hey, nice to meet you,
Yeah, like they didn't let it breathe. They didn't let it build. Say that again, Jim. Sorry.
I thought the show did that a couple of times in this episode. Yeah.
So as it's building tension, it just kind of deflates it very, very quickly. Now, some in the chat are suggesting, well, he sees, it's not that he's being necessarily benevolent or good to them. It's that he sees, that they're potentially, someone said, cannon fodder. War is a numbers game. So now he's got 4. He does sort of give them the, a test, you could say, where he assumes, I guess they all assume that they're going up against that other faction. I don't have the Hattans. The Hattans?
Yeah. The Hattans.
The Hattans. So
Yeah.
they all think that they're going up into battle against the Hattans, but it turns out to be Jod. Now that's another place where, to your point about tension, and it's just Jod.
Yeah.
These kids, I'm kind of seeing what you're throwing down here. The kids haven't really been tested to the extent that maybe they should by now. Although losing SM33, there's also the question of when you're dealing with a show about children, how far can you push it? Especially in a Star Wars, how far can you go into really, really testing them? It's a fair question, right? I mean,
yeah. I mean, I brought up Hunger Games.
Yeah.
I mean, they seem to have no problem with it.
Yeah, those are
And
PG-13 and R-rated
Even
movies.
Harry Potter puts the kids in more peril than this show has.
I would agree with that. Yes, you're right. You're right.
I mean, the biggest challenge for these kids thus far is being homesick. Really.
Yeah.
I'm just saying they didn't earn the respect of this tribe, these Troiks, this clan, whatever you want to call them.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like the kids should have had to have earned their respect before they were even given a bowl of food, I mean, they should have been locked up right away. Again, here we go again. We're locked up again. I don't want the show to be repetitive or anything, but I'm just saying that there should have been something of an obstacle in their way before even being accepted by the Troik. They said, we want you to prove yourself to go to the Forgotten Realm, or what's the name of that? Fallen Sanctum.
The Sanctum, yeah.
Yeah, that's what they had to
Fallen
prove
Sanctum.
themselves. So they just threw themselves into a potential conflict so they could prove themselves to be worthy of getting access to this place. And
maybe they should have given this period of time that they were with the Troiks. Maybe they should have given this a little bit more room. Maybe we should have spent a little more time with them. Maybe they should have been away from Jod for a full episode, or maybe an episode and a half, so that the reunion has a little bit more drama to it. I mean, the kids are so damn likable in the show that I definitely felt a sense of relief when they were reunited with Jod. Neel goes over and gives him a hug. So like they definitely see him as a protector and as security and safety. But I'm gonna agree with you here. I think that they probably could have ratcheted up the tension a little bit more and spent a little bit more time. Now, this brings up the question, though. Why spend more time with them unless there's going to be perhaps a payoff later with this tribe, or it's going to have implications for somewhere? There hasn't been a whole lot of foreshadowing or telegraphing in this show for me. That's not good, bad, or indifferent. What I mean is they're not throwing things out there that I go, oh, that's going to come back. They seem to resolve pretty much everything as they're going along. Now, the one big thing out there are still the pirates, and the pirates are still looking for them. But we don't see any evidence that they're on their trail, right?
Right.
We don't. So, like, you would think that there would be in each episode a moment where the pirates are, almost there, right on them, or maybe that the pirates would have been shaking down Kim at this point in this episode. Where did they go? Where did you send them? There's just not a whole lot of trail being laid to where I can say, oh, this is going to show up or be dealt with in another episode.
Well, one thing I thought that was foreshadowing potentially what we'll see next week is the moment when Hannah showed Neel that giant laser cannon they have. Now, that was revealed, but it wasn't used at all during this episode.
Right.
So there's no point in revealing something like that unless it's going to be used later down the road in the story. So I think maybe next week the pirates will find their way to At Attin,
Ooh.
and they'll have to use that cannon, or this conflict with the Hattans will continue to develop and build into something bigger.
Well, here's a thought. If the architecture is the same across all of these planets, and all that was revealed of that cannon prior to them, turning the big, it's almost like you'd go up to a manhole cover in a street, put a device in, turn it, and all of a sudden you got a big cannon that comes up out of it. It could be something that's on At Attin. So At Attin is disguised as this, place with no weapons, no conflict. But when they get there, maybe the pirates show up at Attin. Maybe there's a battle of At Attin, and Neel's going to remember that. Oh, this is where this is a cannon. It's got to be.
Well, yeah, they were on top of the school building. That's where these people were living.
Okay, so there could be a big showdown at the school.
Was. So yeah. That could be that big room they were in, that war room, that big giant room. That was the equivalent of back at school on At Attin, the big giant hallway they were in when they were taking their assessment exam.
Oh, the giant space. Classroom.
Yeah.
Okay.
Same space, but obviously being used for a different purpose on a different planet. So did they equip that building with the cannon, the troik? Are they the ones who installed that cannon? Or is it something that you were alluding to? Is that a standard piece of the construction of that building on all 9 planets?
Yeah. These are some hiding military weaponry in a school, child soldiers, these are definitely things that have echoes in our own world, in our own galaxy, certainly not so far away. By the way, this is a call-in show. I'm going to remind you, I see we've got looks like 1 or 2 in queue. 708-866-1737, that's the number. I'm not going to sit here and read to people what you think about this episode, unless we got a full switchboard. So 708-866-1737. If you want to get your point across, call, put your voice where your mouth is or where your fingers are, and sound off that way. Because it's a call-in show. It's a talk show. It's not where we read your comments. We'll read the overflow. That's what we like to do. Overflow. So Tyler is waiting. Tyler's our call screener and the official program observer here. So make sure you get him to work tonight. 708-866-1737. Super chats obviously always welcome and appreciated very much. Jim, the kids all sort of have, well, not all. In particular, Neel and Fern probably have a couple of what we would consider developmental moments. Neel seems to take the spotlight in this episode. Fern does have a moment where she starts to doubt her leadership abilities. That, once they realize that their only hopes of getting home have been dashed because the coordinates to At Attin have been destroyed, she wants to give up. She starts to doubt that she's capable. She doesn't know what the next step is. And it's really the first time we see Fern kind of drop her guard and be vulnerable.
Yeah. Big contrast in the personalities between Wim and Fern in this scene, because Wim seemed eager as ever and goes running up to her. What should we do next, Captain? He's all into it. And she's like having a breakdown. I just led us into a battle and almost got us killed. Well, almost, not quite.
Not close enough, says Jimmy Mack.
The EOPs were bought and paid for. So
hey, that was cool seeing EOPs. By the way, I don't want to derail you, but Max
you're
got
not really
right. He's got the action figure. His beast of burden is here. The EOP. Now, is that the EP1 EOP that came with the Qui-Gon Jinn figure?
Yeah, it was a fan club exclusive EOP, and it's a great figure. It really is. Now, the ones on the show had horns, they had antlers. Turtle Wars in the chat says that he thought that was really the most interesting thing about the episode was that the EOPs had antlers.
Turtle Wars would say that, being an animal guy, a researcher, he's looking at the. Yeah, I got a shot. You can see in this shot where she's Hana is looking at the EOP in the little mirror. Yep, there they are, antlered EOPs.
So yeah, that is different. Maybe that's only something that EOPs on At Attin have, the antlers, because we never saw them before. They were in the Phantom Menace. They were in the Kenobi show, but definitely
maybe the
not
off-world EOPs. Fantastic.
There you go with the antlers. Yeah. But let's talk about the EOPs because I thought the EOPs were great characters in this episode. There was that one moment when Neel and Fern are hanging out in the encampment, and Fern says that the Troik's lives depend on the EOPs, and kind of a nod to episode 1. Did you hear the EOPs fart?
Oh, come on!
I'm telling you, it was kind of buried in the mix, but it's there. So I pulled the audio. I pulled the audio, took it down in the sound lab for a little breakdown here. But here's the scene with the EOPs, and if you'll hear the EOPs fart after Hana says they may stink.
We ready?
Yes.
Okay, here we go.
Last week, the Attin stole a herd of our EOPs. The beasts may stink, but our lives depend on them.
I heard it.
Actually, it's actually after she says EOPs, not stink.
Yeah.
Play it one more
I think
time.
I heard it. Okay.
Last week, the Attin stole a herd of our EOPs. The beasts may stink, but our lives depend on them.
Okay. Well, like I said, I took it into the sound lab and enhanced it a little bit.
Enhanced.
So here it is. You'll clearly hear the EOP fart here. This is not anything that I didn't add any sound effects to this or anything. I just cranked up the volume when the EOPs actually fart. It's part of the show.
Last week, the Attin stole a herd of our EOPs. The beasts may stink, but our lives depend on them.
Right,
as my 12-year-old son would say, that sounded wet. All right, let's go.
Play it again. Play it again.
Last week, the Attin stole a herd of our EOPs. The beasts may stink, but our lives depend on them.
See, that's just so Star Wars.
Wow.
It's like the joke is like in Star Wars, if an alien is seen eating a slice of pizza, it will be revealed at some point that he's from a planet where all they do is eat pizza and make pizza, and their entire society it surrounds the pizza. It completely depends on the pizza. It's the pizza planet, right? Not to talk about what a Toy Story or whatever, Pizza Planet. So there's an EOP farting because that's a tribute to Star Wars Episode 1. Who could ever forget that moment with Jar Jar Binks, P.U.S.A.? So it got me thinking, Swank. It got me thinking. Okay. Is it the same fart that was used in the
to make a new fart? And
is it the same fart? So I put the two scenes, the two EOP scenes from first you'll hear Skeleton Crew and then you'll hear Phantom Menace. And so putting them back to back or butt to butt with each other, we can judge whether or not it's the exact same fart sound effect that Ben Burt used all those years ago.
Can I just say this is why you listen to Rebel Force Radio, folks? This is why this is the place you come for Star Wars analysis. We're going deep, deep, deep into the bowels of the EOP. Here we go. The comparison.
Last week, the Attin stole a herd of our EOPs.
All right, I want to hear that one more time. This is the comparison. So the first one is from Skeleton Crew, and then you hear the one from episode 1. Here we go.
Last week, the Hatton stole a herd of our eel beasts.
I say yes.
I don't know.
Right?
I'm saying no.
Oh, you're saying no. You're saying they went to the trouble to make a new fart.
I don't know if they made a new fart, but I know the way Ben Burt operates, and he never has just one draft of a sound effect. He does several of them and probably presents them to George Lucas in succession. George, could you come to the editing suite, please, and choose a fart for the Eopies? Well, this isn't going to take long, is it? No, we only have 15 of them for you to listen to and choose. Okay. So he sits there and listens to all these farts. And to my ear, there is something very similar about the sound of those farts. But I think they're two different takes. Two different Eopie farts from the same Eopie, most likely. But there are two different farts. If you could
Jim,
play the comparison one more time.
Yeah,
it's kind of
absolutely.
tight the way I edited it.
Here we go.
Last week, the Hatton stole a herd of our eel beasts.
Wow, now you're
the other one kind of.
Go ahead.
The one from Skeleton Crew kind of starts a little hot and then sort of fizzles out. And the one from Phantom Menace sort of builds to a giant climax. So
here's the Eopie fart as it was isolated for the old soundboard on StarWars.com, which we will occasionally play from time to time.
Okay, there it is. And then let's hear the Skeleton Crew play cut 2.
Last week, the Hatton stole a herd of our eel beasts. The beasts may stink, but our lives depend on them.
Wow, that's a hard call. That's a hard call.
That's a tough one. I mean, it's going to be a late night in the sound lab. That's all I got to say.
And a smelly one. Did Ben Burt ever reveal the source of the fart sound effect that he used in episode 1? Did Ben just bring the mic right there into the bath with him one time after some Mexican food?
As much as I would like to say, boy, I believe it's legit flatulence. I don't think it is.
Oh, okay.
I think it's like he just did that over and over into a mic. Ooh, what did that guy eat for dinner? So that's our segment on Eopie flatulence. I'll be turning this into the podcast museum. I'm sure they're going to want to have this audio for their archives, but it's an important thing to get to the bottom of it.
This Eopie flatulence section brought to you by GasX. Take GasX for all of your indigestion needs this holiday season.
Yeah, GasX is number 1, says RFR. So, but I was convinced that they were two different farts. But hearing you playing that isolated one from the soundboards, really, see, that has more of that's like the everlasting fart. And that's what I was sensing more from Skeleton Crew. When I heard the Phantom Menace, I was like, oh, that's like a direct hit. It's like a boom. And the other one kind of stretches it out a little bit more. But now hearing them together like that, like I said, I'm going to have to take this back into the sound lab and be burning the midnight oil. Be burning the mule too. Yeah, something's burning. Somebody making soup.
Don't light a match in the RFR Sound Lab tonight because the Eopie farts are going to be ripping.
No.
Oh, my gosh.
There you go. But they may stink, but our lives depend on them. She says them.
Them. Yeah, the actress, I didn't look, but Sisa Gray is the actress. She was also immediately, I thought, likable for me. I liked the portrayal. I liked the way she vibed with the other kids. But I think I detected a French accent, I believe.
What did you say her name was?
Sisa Gray or Sisa Gray?
I have Hala Finley as Hana.
Oh.
And I don't see a Sisa.
RFR. Yeah, the RFR show prep team is going to hear it from me.
I fired those guys a long time ago. That's why I got.
Embarrassing. How did I end up with Sisa Gray? Okay, what's the actor's name that you have?
I have, according to IMDb,
That's a good source.
Hala Finley. And she was in the Venom film, I believe. If I remember correctly, she was in that film. The actor who played General Strix is a guy named Matteo Kassovitz, and he is from Paris. He is a French actor with many French film credits on his IMDb.
That's not who I have. I don't even want to tell you the name that I got. So I'm going to,
well, let's look into this. Somebody's got the wrong information here.
No, you've got the right information. I trust IMDb because the actors themselves look over, in many cases, their IMDb profiles. We're going to go with yours. But so, the point being, I did detect French accent from the actress playing Hana. And I was trying to think, Jim, if we've heard a lot of different dialects, for British accents. I think we've even heard some brogue going on in Star Wars. I don't recall a French accent before. Maybe in Clone Wars there was a yes. You know what? There was the Twi'leks had a little bit of a French thing going on, if I recall.
Yeah, Turtle Wars in the chat said Hana's accent sounded a lot like Ayla Secura's.
Ah, that's right. Okay, so yes,
he was on top of that one. But yeah, I noted the same thing. Our lives depend on them.
Yes. No, I thought she was great. I thought, here I'll tell you, the moment that she was talking to Neel, not to get on a soapbox, but this idea, and they redeemed themselves here, but this idea that you can be feckless, ineffective, and totally non-threatening, and as long as you're kind, that's heroic. And I've never believed that. I don't think that being heroic is when you have no other choice but to be kind, no other choice but to be nice because there's no teeth behind you at all. And I was really worried because I'm like, I don't like this moral. I don't like this idea that just kindness without the possibility of being a threat is a virtue. But at the end, they really redeemed it where Neel was willing to sacrifice himself potentially for his friends when he acted as sort of a distraction for SM-33. So they did redeem it, but I was a little bit worried up to that point because I wanted there to be more to Neel than just being kind of silly and nice and kind, but also very cowardly.
I was kind of surprised that Neel stepped up there and actually walked in front to lead everyone into this potential battle. And he's monologuing about friends and not wanting to hurt anyone and doing the right thing and all this stuff. But meanwhile, he's out in front. He's got those red overalls on. Hey, listen, I was thinking this while I was watching it, and Corey reached out to us on the RFR Facebook page and said, hey, why is Neel wearing the same clothes as Stewie from Family Guy? Why is that? It's the exact same wardrobe.
Oh, no.
He's dressed as Stewie from Family Guy. But, that was a situation, again, as the tension was building, only to be deflated by lack of conflict. It's all happening too easy, I think, for these kids. And they need I think they need a severe setback at some point here in the next episode for sure. They need something to knock them down just a little bit. And we might get that. Next week's going to be directed by Bryce Dallas Howard. And we were playing clips of John Watts and Chris Ford on the weekly RFR. And they said there are elements having to do with episode 6. Is it episode 6 already, or is it 5?
5. Next week will be 5.
Wait, next week is 5.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So Bryce is
I
coming
got
in
ahead of myself.
episode
I was
6?
thinking that this was episode 5, but no. Next week is I don't have the director for next. Oh, that's the guy who did the show Beef. His name Paul Schreier, I think his name is. And Beef was a good show. I enjoyed that show a lot. But he's directing next week. Then the week after is Bryce Dallas Howard. Okay. So maybe somewhere in these next 2 episodes, the kids will have a setback and they'll be involved in some emotional situation. Maybe even thinking like one of them died or something like that. I mean, right, I'm not suggesting any of these kids get killed off. Who do I look like? Who do I look like? Lawrence Kasdan? No, I'm not suggesting that any of the kids get killed off, but there is some element of their story that seems to be unfurling. These challenges are getting conquered with relative ease, and I sure they're trapped out in the middle of a galaxy they know nothing about, with no way to get home.
All right.
How did they get to At Attin too? The episode started off so abruptly with them pulling up on At Attin.
Well, they went to hyperspace at the end of episode 3. That's what we saw. They had the coordinates. They had the little gold chip or thing that came out of Kim's computer, and they jumped to hyperspace, and boom, there they are. So
there they are.
Yeah.
But what about the barrier? This barrier doesn't seem to be much of a barrier.
Well,
because
certainly,
the kids flew,
right.
The kids flew away from the planet through the barrier with great AEs, and here they are back in the system. The barrier is nothing. The barrier is a myth. The barrier is fake news.
Well, that actually might be part of the plot in some ways.
Yeah.
That
right.
The barrier is actually nothing. It's just a myth. People, yeah. There's but yeah. I'm distracted because everyone in the chat is asking for a comparison. Since Mac brought it up, they're asking for a comparison of Neel and Stewie Griffin. So here we got Neel in the red overalls, in sort of the yellow shirt, and here we got Stewie Griffin.
I mean, they're wearing the same
yellow
thing.
shirt and red overalls. So yes, indeed.
Yeah,
there you go.
But I was really thinking it when I was watching Neel walk from behind, and he had that, the part where the fabric straps kind of become an X in the back of the
That's
overall.
when it hit you?
And I was like, this is such an outrageous visual here, because all of those Troiks were wearing leftover wardrobe from the Solo film. They really were, though. They were dressed as mud trooper. Remember the mud troopers?
Yeah. I got shots of those guys. The General Veers helmets, all that. Very.
Yeah. See, though, they're the same helmets.
Yeah.
Some of them were wearing the goggles underneath the helmets, and they didn't have gas masks. But they're the same helmets from Solo, a Star Wars story.
We're moving fast here. All right, so let's just satisfy. Here's the X pattern on the back of Neel.
It's Stewie from Family Guy with an elephant head.
But I do have some shots of the troopers from the Attin group here. Let me see. I wanted to grab those so that we could kind of look. There were also some. Oh, Jod's moment of just shoot me. His resignation. That was a laugh out loud moment for me. I thought that was pretty damn funny. He's just over it. He's over getting captured every time he turns around. But these guys. So here's some. Well, it wasn't just the Hattans, because we also saw it with the Troikas.
No,
they also were.
Well, no,
sporting
that's why I
some of
said the
helmets.
Troiks.
Oh, you said
I
the
didn't say
Troiks.
the Hattans.
Oh,
or
okay.
The Hattans, whatever.
The Hattans. Yeah, we got some shots of them as they were. But anyway, yeah. So definitely they had like imperial vibes. So somehow, Jim, those elements found their way to these planets. Now, here's a question: once the pirates have raided one of these 9 systems, one of these 9, are they no longer hidden? Do they no longer have protection? Are they isolated? Is that why they devolve into warring factions, because there's no in or out? I don't know the answer to that. Just throwing it out there that it's kind of interesting to think about. Where, at Akron, they still had to get those coordinates from Kim. It wasn't as though Jod goes, well, I've never heard of At Attin, but I've heard of At Akron. You know what I mean? Like, so it's not as though people are just throwing that out there. So I guess I have to think that even though they've been plundered over time and stripped of their resources and treasures, that they're still not easily found. So maybe the pirates don't leave much of a trail. That's what we're talking about in this episode, is that perhaps the reason that At Attin is still protected is because it's only been discovered by one pirate, and he killed everybody that was a witness to where it was. So.
Exactly. He wanted to keep the secret for himself.
Right.
And and they reprogrammed the droid.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then he must have, the only thing I could think of is that he crash landed on At Attin, maybe died upon impact.
Or what if he is, what do they call that leader that sits in that lives in that tower? The
supervisor.
The supervisor. What if the supervisor ends up being the pirate captain that discovered At Attin? I've heard some people online suggesting that At Attin is actually run by droids. We see everyone sort of subservient to some degree of droids, but it would be kind of an interesting twist if the one that was calling the shots the whole time, it's kind of like in the Popeye movie when you find out that the Commodore everyone's been talking about for 2 hours is Popeye's dad, the guy that they've been looking for, or that he's been looking for. So could we see a situation like where the Commodore for this planet is actually the pirate captain? Kind of fun to think about.
Yes. I know some people were telling me that the supervisor was Farah from the first episode, but she specifically labeled herself as Undersecretary Farah.
Yeah, that's too obvious. That's like when you're watching a Scooby-Doo episode and there's the one that you think it is, but it's just too obvious, too on the nose.
Right. So it's not her. But yeah, the whole idea of the supervisor, what is the supervisor supervising? What is the thing that fuels this society on At Attin? And the great work, all of that stuff is just a big, confusing thing that I hope gets paid off. I hope that element of the story gets paid off. I'm sure it will.
Yeah.
Watson Ford, we're talking about how it all comes together by the last episode. And we learn about Jod and the mystery surrounding him and his connection to the Force and his past. That'll all happen toward the end,
Right.
as it should. If they want to leave us hanging on that, that's fine. But yeah, they certainly are leading us into all these different directions. I feel like I'm in a pretzel factory making pretzels because I'm getting all tied up in knots trying to figure out where
Well,
this story is going and trying to connect the dots. And that's a good thing. That's good. I'm not
Yeah.
complaining.
Yeah, I think it is. And I also think that obviously when you have a show like this, we sort of hang a lantern on all of the potential mysteries, and some of them may not actually, in the minds of the creatives, may not actually be real mysteries that we're supposed to be spinning our wheels on. But definitely who the again, I'm sorry, what's the character? The supreme, I want to say
The
supreme
supervisor?
chancellor. The supervisors. I gotta write
Yeah.
the supervisor. I'm gonna go on record. I'm gonna do a little FJ DeSanto prophet or loser. I feel good enough about this. I'm gonna declare that the supervisor will be the pirate captain of the SM-33 ship.
Okay. All righty then.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw the skeletons on board the ship, but
did.
we also do know that the captain killed his whole crew.
Right.
And he could have killed them on board the ship and left the ship to crash land on the planet At Attin with the droid on board. And how did it get buried?
And
Was that
how
over
did the
time?
right?
Yeah.
And who deactivated the droid? Did the droid deactivate upon impact, or was he deactivated? You know, seeing how easily Jod is able to deactivate the droid could make you wonder, okay, so the droid was hidden in the ship, which was then hidden, in the ground by the captain to cover up his tracks. So just disconnect the droid, keep the ship in there. What do you say we take a few calls? We got some calls back
That would
here.
be great.
Let's do that.
I would love to
Let's,
hear what people think.
Yeah. Let's start with, how about we got a Patreon member here. Let's go with Lone Star Nat. Lone Star Nat calling in from Texas. Hey, Lone Star, what's going on?
Hey.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are y'all? I got a few questions and points.
Okay.
So I understand Jimmy Mac's point that the kids need a greater challenge. But in this episode, I feel like it was they were presented with what kids would understand as like a life or death situation. Like the adults on the planet, the Troikas or what, the clan that starts with the T, like I think they're really their explanation was that they treat the kids as adults, but really I think they're just explaining that they're willing to treat kids however they need to survive. And they suckered 4 little kids into being the front lines of the next battle because they could.
So they were sort of exploiting them, taking advantage of them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was feeling for the kids there. They were just being presented with we love kids here, but in reality, they were just signing up to be frontline soldiers.
Yeah. I dig what you're saying. And really, when I think about the biggest challenge a kid could ever face, it would be having to act like an adult. What kid wants to act like an adult?
Yeah.
That's terribly challenging. So yes, if you do look through the perspective of the kids, but I'm looking at it more as how the story is rolling out. And I think they need, at this point, midway through this season, they need some sort of legitimate setback, not something that's going to scare them or hurt their feelings or bust their confidence. I want to see them get delivered a genuine setback.
I got you. You wanted something walking out of that mist that wasn't Jod.
I don't understand. Walking out of the mist, that wasn't Jod.
Yeah, when Jod was revealed.
When they were walking to that battle, if like a true threat came out of that mist and it wasn't Jod, like that's what I was trying to say. Sorry.
See, the whole thing, the whole tension, it was all building up toward this conflict, and the conflict got resolved before anything could happen. And it got resolved off screen. So these are the things that kind of drive me crazy as someone who's trying to soak in a story, is when we get explained things. This is a visual medium. Show us. But obviously the show is being presented from the perspective of the kids. So I don't think we've really seen Jod unless he's with the kids outside of the introduction sequence from episode 1 when he was Captain Silvo, the pirate. Since then, I take that back. We did see him rifling through the kids' gear.
Yeah.
And taking Wim's money, but he was still in the presence of the droid. So, but I think largely the story is being told from the kids' perspective. So to cut away and have these long segments with Jod negotiating with Hattans, I mean, really, where's that gonna get us? I might
right, like and there wasn't too much negotiation because he had these very, very valuable credits that were, insanely, valuable. Especially, can you imagine how much, how many helmets that would buy? It'd buy them a lot of helmets and goggles. Those Hattans.
A lot of leftover wardrobe from the Solo film.
Now, what else
did you?
What did you have on your mind?
No, so separate from that, which I do think they previewed, going back, I think they previewed well that it would be the rifling through the credits with how he gets out of it and SM-33 calling him a thief and then forgetting that he's a part of the crew, that he was gonna that's going to be how he got out of his ordeal. But separate from that, I think it was a fun episode of the week type episode, but that also had that still kept the overarching arc going. And if we never go back to this planet, we have enough questions answered for what's next that we're not left in the dark. And so I think it scratched an itch of all right, let's have something told tonight, but also let's keep the story going.
Yeah. I think that compared to what we've had in the past with the Disney Plus shows, and I'm going to always sort of asterisk this with Mando season 1 and 2 just being just the top of the line as far as I'm concerned of Disney Plus streaming series, that I can pick nits on this show, and there are nits to pick, and that's what we do. This is an analysis show and reviewing it and having fun with it. I will take the flaws of this show over the flaws that we've pointed out on some of the other shows in terms of gaping plot holes, reversing conventions of, Star Wars, known Star Wars sort of technology and canon and things like that. So there's not enough here. There's plenty for conversation, but not enough for me to say, oh, here we go again with the Disney Plus and these series. I like that. I feel like the show is not biting off more than it can chew. And I know we see some of the folks in the chat that are saying, hey, Plagueis this and Sith that. And that's super fun to speculate. I don't think that's what this show is trying to do. I don't even think it's on the radar of this show. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it'll all tie to Exegol and
I don't think
the
so.
First
No.
Order or the Final Order, but I don't
No.
think that's what they're trying to do. But great call. Thanks very much, Nat. Appreciate it. Thanks for being a Patreon.
No, that's a good point. All the points you bring up. I'm kind of splitting hairs over this just to provide a critical take on the show for the sake of conversation and just share the things that are going through my head. But I don't get removed from my enjoyment of this show. I think this is a very well put together show, but I'm just bringing up things that I would have suggested in the writer's room. And I don't care if it's the Daniels or, any of these show directors
Favreau,
or even
Filoni, Deborah Chow, whoever.
even if it's like, Steven Spielberg himself, I would still raise my hand and go, hey, we're building up a lot of tension here and there's no payoffs. And it happens multiple times in this episode. Do you think something can happen? Like, can the kids fall into a pit or something? I mean, just anything, it doesn't have to be anything that's going to turn the story inside out, but it will present the kids with a unique challenge. But as our caller said, what's more challenging to a kid than being asked to act like an adult? That's pretty challenging. So when you look through it, definitely through the perspective of the kids and put yourself in their heads. Yeah, it's terrible and it's awful, but I need something I can chew on sitting at home on my sofa, So that's I want to raise the stakes just a little bit higher.
I hear you. Well, you know what we need? I actually think that we need the perspective of one of these kids that you're talking about. And who better to do it than Blake? Blake is on the line, and he's going to tell us about stakes and kids.
It's time for Blake's Take.
Hey, Kid Blake.
Hey, Chut.
Chut.
Hey,
How you guys doing?
Doing great. What did you think of this episode, Blake?
I really liked this episode because, it felt like, I don't know if any of you guys have watched, the Flash TV show. But that's what it felt like to me. It's basically like a parallel.
You got it. Parallel.
Universe.
Yeah, it's a hard word.
Yeah. It's a parallel, planet, basically, of At Attin. At Akron. That's what it's called, right?
Yeah, they're
At
on
Akron.
At Akron. They're on At Akron, and it's sort of this doppelganger, upside down version of At Attin. Yes.
Yeah, it's like the opposite version. Like on their planet, everything is built perfectly. Everyone is nice and kind most of the time, and there's nothing really bad going on. This other planet, there's wars everywhere. They're fighting to death. Children are basically in charge, and there's no droids anywhere. And yeah, and they have tanks going around.
Wait. Let's back up just a quick second. That's an interesting observation. I have to think about that. I don't recall seeing a lot of droids hanging out there and At Akron. Certainly not taking any kind of prominent spot amongst the troikas there. Troiks.
Yeah.
I keep saying troika.
Yeah, I don't think I saw any besides SM-33.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's interesting. Were there
think
any
there was
droids? I mean, I was capturing, doing my best to capture as Neel was walking around with Hana. I was trying to capture, some of the different species and creatures and things that we could see. We saw an Ithorian. We saw a Greedo. We saw, I don't know what the one was.
There was a hammerhead.
Yeah. That's the Ithorian. And then the one I thought seemed like it was the one on the in the marketplace in episode 1 that's yelling at Jar Jar for grabbing the meat off the ooga ooga bunga. That guy. That guy. I thought I saw something like that. But anyway, I digress. But you're right. I don't recall seeing, not saying that there weren't any, but I don't recall seeing any droids.
Yeah, it's like the other planet is like fully focused on droids. This planet, the only one is the one that they just brought onto the planet, from what it seems.
We're dealing with a
That seems to
society
be like
that
the
puts
only droid.
we're dealing with a society that puts children on the battlefield. I'm pretty sure they've gone through all their droids already.
Oh, there's a
It's
good
like,
point.
well,
Yeah.
Oh, we're out of droids. Now what are we going to do? We're going to have to fight. No, wait a second. We have children. Let's throw them out there first.
Yeah, why not?
So, Blake, they would probably call you into service if you lived on at Akron. They would probably, yeah, you'd be up for it, right?
That sounds like fun.
Yeah, see,
Blake's like
But
whim.
just to go
Blake's the
battle
whim
people,
here
I mean,
of
like,
yeah, you're ready for the excitement and the adventure, right?
oh yeah. Like if like that seems like fun. Go battle in space basically. Another planet. Like
I'm scrolling through
In that giant-
a group shot of the Hattans, and I don't see any droids. They definitely have a big vehicle there, the big kind of a tank, but no droids. I
the
think Matt's
Hammerhead
right.
driving it. Hammerhead driving the tank.
Look at that.
Yeah,
Yes.
you betcha. Yeah. I don't
Well, they
know
are
if
great
that's-
drivers.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
those big
Oh,
eyes.
they're known for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're
You get
known
into
for
a
that.
taxi and there's an Athorian. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're in good hands.
Yeah, they can see what's around the corner before turning around the corner.
So, any theories, Blake, as to well, you know what? Here's the question I really want to ask you. We were debating and talking about the stakes in this show, and how the kids kind of going through the fog, not knowing what was on the other side of that fog. For Mac and for some others, might have felt that it was a little anticlimactic. I pointed that out instead. Oh, here it's Jod. It's anticlimactic. And then we had a caller before you that said, well, wait a minute. If you look at it from the kid's perspective, that's terrifying. You are a kid. You are literally Kid Blake. So when you were watching those scenes, did you feel that the stakes were high? And were you kind of putting yourself in the position of these characters, thinking, wow, if this was me, I'd be scared out of my you-know-what?
I mean, it was definitely like it had its like moment to where it felt like you don't know what's on the other side. But as soon as John Wood came through it, I was like, okay. Then he probably has the people he was just with him, and like they're about to just attack.
Yeah,
They're about to attack the kids, but it was just him.
It was just
him.
him.
Like pretty shocked about that. I was figuring that he was gonna like switch up on him. And like say sorry, I had to do what had to be done.
You triggered a memory of that I had when I was watching the show. Was I expected Jod was? I figured Jod was being used as a diversion or something.
Like bait.
Yeah, like bait. Yeah, by the other clan, and that he was there, and then all of a sudden, the smog would clear, and then you would see that there was a whole army behind him ready to attack. The kids.
Yeah, no, there's gonna be like tanks.
So the question
Like
is, was that a letdown for you when you realized that it was just Jod? All he had to do was pay the money, and the kids were back, with him. Did it fall flat for you, or were you like, "Oh, that's cool. I can see that."
I mean, like it wasn't like it could have been more climactic. Like they could have at least had maybe a tank behind him, and it like fires off. And then an explosion happens. They all come running out, and then like they stop the guys, like the one tank that's there. But then like John Wood, he literally like he could just be like a part of their like helping them out, trying to find the coordinates to At Attin.
Mm-hmm.
Like they could have made it a little bit more climatic, but it was pretty good where it was.
Okay.
But they could have added on.
All right.
Like it would have made it.
Kid Blake seems to be on your side, Jim, where maybe they can raise the stakes a little bit more, even though they're dealing with kids here.
Right.
A little higher, a little higher.
Yeah. I mean, kids like watching other kids in perilous situations, I think. I think that's exciting for kids to see that because it's more scary. Ooh, this could happen to me. So I don't think the Star Wars audience, the younger Star Wars audience, people like Kid Blake, need to be treated with kid gloves. Just let's get it all out there. I'm telling you, Harry Potter had those kids in serious danger all the time.
Yeah,
So
you're
I don't
absolutely
know
right.
why we have to, keep them latched to the nipple when it comes to Star Wars storytelling. Let's throw them out there and really. Now, somebody in the chat brought up, well, last episode they were getting chased by X-Wings and getting shot at and stuff. But yeah, they were making their getaway.
They need to do that every episode.
Yeah,
They
I
need to have,
wanted.
They need to have stuff going on every time.
Maybe it's Wim. Maybe it's his whole enthusiastic approach to all of this. I want to knock him down a notch, I think.
Whoa.
Yes.
Mac wants to
I
take
want him to
Wim
realize.
down a peg.
Yeah, this is serious stuff, man. This is the Star Wars universe. You go walking along, you think you're in like some sand dunes. The next thing you know, Tusken Raiders are jumping out. This is not a safe place. And I want to see some of that enthusiasm get sucked out of Wim. I want him to get his pants scared off of him in such a way that it changes him forever. And we see legitimate character development and evolution.
We've seen, that's a good point. We have seen Neel. We've seen Neel get a character growth moment. We've seen Fern now get a character growth moment where she sort of reestablishes her faith in herself. I think you're right. I think next we got to see something happen with Wim, and we got to see something with KB. The foreshadowing that we have had of KB's health issues, I think that's something that's going to rear up at some point. And who knows, maybe that'll actually be a double whammy, and that'll impact not just KB, but it'll also impact Wim, and the stakes will be such, that it has a significant takes a significant toll on both characters. Blake, we're at the halfway point. We've got 4 more episodes after this. Do you feel comfortable making any guesses as to where this is going?
I feel like John, he's gonna, they're gonna try to get the coordinates out of SM-33 because he knows exactly where it is, what the coordinates are, because he was sent to destroy them. But what if when they, since SM-33 has basically some loose wires and stuff where he forgets stuff and all this type of stuff, what if John pretends to be his captain? Tries to get the info out of him. He's the biggest out of the group, and he probably has the highest chance of getting the information out of him. Because he can act like the captain, and then Fern will probably make him the captain just for that.
Okay. All right. I kind of like where you're going. I do think at the end, the happily ever after on this show is that Jod and SM-33 are going to sail off into the sunset together as a formidable pirate captain and first mate, and that Jod's, I don't see Jod moving in next door to Wim and his dad. What's the dad's name? The nerdy guy. But anyway,
Kendall?
I don't.
Wendell, I think.
Wendell,
Kendall?
that's right.
Wendell.
I don't see him moving next door to Wendell and Wim anytime soon. But hey, Blake, you got holiday break coming up, so that's great for us. So we'll be talking to you in the next couple of weeks here as we continue to watch this series unfold. Always good talking to you, buddy. Good luck in your last week at school. Do good on your exams.
Yeah.
All right, bud. Take care. All right. We'll talk to you next week. All right. There he goes. There goes Blake. We've got
Good
some
old
super
kid
chats
Blake.
we want to get to. Let's see. Don't forget the number to call 708-866-1737. Be like Kid Blake. Be on the air. Super chats. Media Rev says, I thought this episode was poor. Too kiddie. No jeopardy. Well, Media Rev, you've got you might have a little bit of sympathy on this side of the broadcast, thinking that perhaps the jeopardy could have been ratcheted up a little bit. Even Kid Blake thought that the stakes could have been a little bit higher, but we always appreciate your support there.
No jeopardy. No Alex Trebek. No daily doubles. No jeopardy.
None. Peter Beiser. No one nicer than Peter Beiser. See, I remember that. That's how I remember. No Joe Besser here. Peter Beiser says, could this show have been a successful family film? Would our reaction to it be different if it were a movie? Keep up the good work, boys. Well, that's an interesting question, Jim. Do you think that you would be as forgiving of things if this was a film? What are the stakes? Would they need to be higher if this was a film? Would the concept even translate as a Star Wars movie?
Well, I definitely think it would translate. As a matter of fact, I think it was pitched as a film to Kathy Kennedy by John Watts and Christopher Ford initially. And then when Disney started prioritizing streaming, it developed into a streaming show. And it feels like a movie, a long movie. That's how a lot of these streaming series do. They're just these long movies. We used to call them mini series back in the day when they like Shogun, a mini series from ABC,
Shaka Zulu,
things like that. But it's just one sprawling story. A series should be composed of individual episodic stories that can come together once the big picture is formed. But this show is all fueled by one singular plot. Kids are lost in space, gotta get home. And there's nothing else to it. It's just one flowing story. So essentially it is a movie. But I think he's talking about like in the traditional sense.
Right.
2 hour, 2.5 hour movie. You go to the theaters. That would have been interesting. But I don't really feel qualified enough to even answer that question until I see the entire series on a whole.
You don't know
when the season is wrapped up, Peter, come back with that same question. And I think you'll get a more qualified response than anything I can give right now. And again, I'll tell you this, I'm nitpicking it for the sake of nitpicking it. I don't really think that this show is flawed like certain Star Wars series of the past have been. I don't see the flaws. It's almost like a wish list for me saying, boy, I wish this was, but what we're being presented with, I think, is still some genuinely solid storytelling. And I think it's going somewhere. In this episode alone, I thought the whole sequence up in the tower with the columns and they were naming all the planets, I thought that was really interesting stuff. It was building the story and keying us into a little bit of information where we can make more educated speculation about where the story is going. The revelation that these planets may all be carbon copies of each other.
Yeah.
These planets within the barrier, getting their names, which I thought at A2, at Arisa, at Aravan, at Akota, at Akron, at Attin. Is this where
Is that all from? 9? Do we have all 9 names? I don't know.
No, we don't. We have what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 6 of the 9.
6 of the 9.
Including At Attin.
Yeah.
We have 6. So maybe there's at Archie and there's like a Riverdale there and like, they'll go there and Mr. Weatherby will be there and Jughead.
Was this tower, was it at all reminiscent, or do you think they were trying to kind of give the vibes of Ezra's tower?
No, I
No,
didn't
just
make
a
that.
very different, because Ezra's was a communications tower, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Ezra, it felt like Ezra was living in like a cell phone tower. This seems more imposing and much bigger.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Eric from Phoenix says, can't make the show tonight. I got Lost vibes from this episode. Merry Christmas, JJ and Tyler and all of the RFR community. Eric, Merry Christmas to you, buddy. Thanks for always being such a great supporter and friend of the show. We appreciate it. I'm not a Lost guy, so I didn't watch Lost. Jim, did you watch Lost? I can't remember if that was okay.
I saw every episode. I definitely thought the first episode reminded me of Lost when they found the starship buried in the forest, because essentially something very similar happens in Lost, where they find a structure underground. And then the mysteries just start unraveling. But yeah, I get it. I'm trying to think of where in this specific episode he was getting vibes of Lost. There were sort of like, if I remember correctly, there were like warring clans in Lost. A lot of Lost. I lost. It's out of my mind. I've completely forgotten about it. Might be worth a rewatch. I don't know. Billy Mack was way into Lost. Oh my God, he was crazy about Lost. But
he had all the theories.
I don't know. I wish Eric was a little more specific about what specifically gave him Lost vibes, or if anybody else listening wants to weigh in on what may have given you a Lost vibe from this episode, I'd like to hear more.
Here's Karen Newton. He says, or she, pardon me, says, not the best episode of the 4 by any means, but loving Skeleton Crew. And finally making my live chat debut, fellas. VIPs represent. Well, thank you. Is it Kier? Kier? Kier. Well, thank you, Kier. Appreciate it. Thanks for being here. And it's odd because, as you were saying earlier, this really feels like one big cohesive story, maybe more so than some of the other shows. So as far as saying like, oh, this episode was a little flatter than the others, it's either that they're doing such a good job of being consistent with the show, or I don't know. I'm not feeling an up and down or an ebb and flow from episode to episode. So it never really even occurred to me to say I liked this or didn't like this as much as, episode 2 or what have you. This really does feel, maybe because it's a mystery, and you're going from, installment to installment. I don't know. I'm not feeling a big division or gap or difference between episodes. It just feels like one big story.
It does. Well, I would have preferred maybe a little bit more time getting to the At Attin system. Just anything. Yeah, we're going through the barrier. Maybe if you make the jump through hyperspace, you bypass the barrier altogether. The trick is you have to know where you're going. You need those precious coordinates, and they can't find them back to At Attin. I think eventually they'll be able to fish that stuff out of 33.
You're right about the barrier. You think there would have been a beat in the show where they would have realized, whoa, they would have been expecting the barrier to actually be a barrier, but then it isn't. And there would be a moment where of recognition that would then pay off later, where they would realize, or they'd maybe even be able to tell the adults on At Attin, no, the barrier, it's not a barrier. It's just green mist. You can go through, and other ships can come back. The other thing, though, right. The other thing is that I feel as though some of the adults that we've met, maybe Wim's dad, Wendell, know more than they're willing to say. Wendell seems to be a character that maybe is holding back a bit, knows a little bit more. He seems, I don't want to say he seemed in the last episode more distraught than the other parents, but there was a weight that seemed to be on Wendell that I didn't, the other parents were just kind of hysterical. whereas Wendell seemed to be weighted down by something. Maybe a truth.
Because he had to get back to work. He didn't have the time off. He
No
needed to get
vacay
back.
time? No PTO?
He didn't get any.
Oh,
He didn't
man.
get any. Anybody else on our switchboard here?
Yeah,
wanna
let's
jump
go
in?
to we've got Andrew. Andrew joining us here. Andrew, he's from the RFR Facebook group. Well, I hope most of our listeners are on the RFR Facebook group. Hey, Andrew, how are you?
Cerveza Cristal.
Yes.
Hey guys, how's it going? It's Andrew Arkham from the Facebook group.
Oh, hey, how you doing? How are you doing?
Good, sir. Good, sir. Good. Thank you. Thank you. I'm just gonna hop right into it because I already know how you guys are doing. So I want to run two theories by you that I'm very excited by, and I think you'll be very excited by them as well.
Okay.
My theory for this show is that that these planets are isolated, like secret science experiments where these planets were hidden away to be experimented on, making them exact templates of each other and make different societies in each of them to test out how they can make the perfect society. So At Attin becomes the Pleasantville kind of thing, and then at Arkin, wherever it is, it becomes like the one that he puts spice in the water or something. But in this case, they put it in the atmosphere. So it's the atmospheric test, AT. So the AT is the atmospheric test. So it's what they're putting into the air that makes each planet different. So this one's Pleasantville from At Attin, and then this one was the one that they tried to make it into the wild society. It got too crazy, and those barriers got powered down and turned them into these, what was that thing, Project Cinder kind of thing, where they had to cleanse the project because it got too violent. The planet turned into the last 3 minutes of Scarface, and they had to cleanse the whole thing, but, life found a way. And then
okay, all right, hold on. All right, Andrew, I so appreciate. By the way, all the callers, Andrew is getting a gold star tonight because Andrew got right into it and went right into it. So now me as a co-host, I gotta pull you back for a second because I want to just make sure that everybody's following what you're saying. What you're implying is that these planets are. What you're saying is that At Akron is not the fall of a society like At Attin, but it more or less it was sort of conceived to be a warring tribal sort of society, whereas At Attin was conceived to be. I like the reference that you gave to Pleasantville. That it was supposed to be, the burbs and everything was peaceful, and that it's some sort of sociological experiment.
Exactly, and the 18 in the beginning of each planet's name is the actual designation for the experiment code for atmospheric test about what they're pumping into the society to make it what they want it to be.
What are you exactly talking about? Are you talking about the stuff that gets shot out of airplanes? It's making us all easily manipulated. Is that what you're talking about?
The drugs are in the air, and that's what Job is tasting when he gets on the planet. And that's why our own little sweet Neel ends up throwing rocks because, hey, who's going to get most of that air in their system than the one with the big blue schnozola?
Wow. Yeah, I like this. I like the way you're thinking here. I think it's just far enough out there to be plausible. And yeah. Good job, man.
Warlike. So I was just thinking that I gave you a Pleasantville, a Scarface, and a reference and all this. So that's why I think, and that's why these planets are hidden because they're all just experiments.
Wow. Look, I'm not willing to buy in 100% of your theory, but I do like the idea more of these planets having something that makes them different from one another than them all just being carbon copies of one another. Like there's got to be sort of a method to the madness. So I dig that a lot. So you start out where everybody has the same the same resources, great architecture, because we know that the planets at least started out very similarly, but then you throw in a variable, which could be, the gases or something. What's also interesting, though, is that we don't see any Rhodians on At Attin. We
do.
We see
We do.
Athorians.
We see a Rhodian when Neel and Wim are having their little make-believe lightsaber duel while they're waiting for the school bus. When the bus moves away, there's a group of kids across the street looking at them like, look at these guys, they're crazy. And among the group of kids, there was an orange Rhodian.
All right. So that theory's out the window. Because what I was going to say is that maybe these planets have been specifically populated by, with different aliens. Because someone brought up last week the mural. And so I went back. We didn't get a chance to talk about it on RFR. I went back and I looked at the mural, and the mural does indeed depict what looks to be sort of a symbolic representatives of every type of being that we've met so far on At Attin, with the exception of Rhodian. So Mac is throwing that wrench in the works. So there's perhaps maybe nothing significant there, although that the mural is there on At Akron, though it's all dilapidated and stuff. So, the more I talk myself into these circles, Andrew, I kind of like what you're throwing down here.
Good. I'm really glad that you're actually on board with it. Even if it's a little bit, I'll take that. Are you ready for my second theory?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay,
There's
so
a
my
second theory.
And
it's crazier than the first theory. Let's hear it. Go ahead.
So I'm thinking, if I had to put together how the At Attin is a very concealed planet, yet you had this pirate ship on there and whatnot. So my guess is, in the not too distant past, there was a pirate looking for a place to hide his treasure, and he knew this one place, and he didn't want anyone else to find it. And so that's why he had, upon his death, had his droid kill the crew and take this hidden treasure to someplace he knew that no one other than him knew it was at. And in the spirit of the last Pirates of the Caribbean movie, a pirate's most precious treasure is a pirate's daughter. So I'm thinking perhaps the former captain's daughter was the treasure that had to be hidden at Attin, and the final orders was to take a child, drop it off on someone's doorstep, bury the ship, and turn yourself off and let time waste away at everything else. And then that child grows up, but they're not used to this artificial atmosphere in this place. And the kid developed health issues growing up. A child in the skeleton crew has been known to have certain health issues. And I'm thinking the pirate treasure is none other than Little Lobot.
KB.
Oh,
KB is the pirate's daughter. All right, I'm not willing to buy into this theory, but I'll tell you what I am willing to buy into, Andrew, is they need to hire you. Your imagination, dude, is absolutely fantastic. I think that you need to have a job out in Hollywood. You need to go over there and blow some minds at Lucasfilm, because I'm not ready to necessarily get on board with all the theories. I just love the mind that it's coming out of.
Thank you. And then it goes to the theory that whispers about his treasure goes out to the world, and they think that the treasure is actual treasure. And it just becomes a whole lore in itself across the pirate world, and that's how that whole thing grows about At Attin. So that was just one of my theories.
Wow, Andrew, thank you so much. Those are great theories. I wish I could do a better job of responding to them, but I need time with them. I need to sit with them later tonight over an adult beverage and think about.
I liked your
theories.
first theory. I liked your first theory.
Yeah.
I didn't really care for the second one. I think that's really off the you're going way out there with that. I think it's going to be a little more straightforward as to what this treasure is. I think it's going to be like actual pirate booty.
Well, we have seen look in the trailer. We saw a treasure room.
That's true.
So that's yet to come. But at any rate, Andrew, love the spirit, love the ideas. Thanks so much, buddy. Appreciate it.
Good job.
Real good. Let's see. We got some more super chats here. Here's David. David says, RFR number 1. I liked most of this ep except for dallying with the Troiks. Killer Smee was great. Jod seemed like a Jedi, but maybe just wants treasure. Jim, was this just a dalliance with the Troiks, or is there going to be, at the end of this, a reason why we met them? Could they, there's that moment at the end with Hannah, and she says, well, maybe someday if I become the leader of the Troiks, we'll find a new way. I mean, are we looking at a scenario where they could come in as the cavalry if there is some sort of final battle on At Attin, and the Troiks being led by Hannah could come to the rescue?
Yeah, we saw something kind of similar play out in The Rise of Skywalker, except instead of Hannah, it was Jannah. I think that's her name. Was her name
that's
Jannah?
Right.
Yeah. And what seemed just kind of like a chance encounter with these locals turned out to be something that paid off in the long run. Maybe something similar like that will happen here. I would like to see everything come full circle. And it sure seemed like they were paving the path for Hannah's eventual reunion with the gang. Neel asked her to come with them, join them on their trip back to At Attin. It seemed like he was getting through to her. She kissed him on the snout.
Sure
did a little flip when she was running away. So there's definitely some sparks there. You can't deny that. It seemed to me they were leaving the door open for her to return. And the way those troikas live, it could be, by the time the credits were rolling, her dad would be dead. They're constantly brawling over food, over everything, with the Hattans. So it's quite possible that the general's shelf life is not going to be long lived. So she might be in charge before you know it.
Yeah,
and she might make the move.
I liked the the little crush I think that Neel had on her. It kind of, I don't know, sort of like when you meet the older girl, and you're a kid and you meet the girl, and in reality she's only like a couple of years older than you, but when you're 10 and she's 12 or 13, that's seems like a lot older, and and you're just so enamored by her and all of that. Just kind of reminded me of those little crushes that you had when you were a kid. But she definitely seemed to be at least impressed by the fact that this kid there was a purity about him, that there was a sincerity about him. He just kept saying, well, I think the best thing to do is just to go and apologize. Like, why are you living in this world of fighting? Somebody just apologize to the other one and move on. And that fell flat for me a bit until the end, when I saw that there were some tusks behind, perhaps nubbins of tusks behind that snout of his. Because in order to really be, I think, virtuous, you have to have more than just kindness. You have to also have the other side to you. Just like with a Jedi, you got to have the ability to hold the darkness back. That's what makes you heroic. That's what makes you a Jedi that is in the light. If you had absolutely no access to or knowledge of the dark, there would be nothing necessarily heroic about you. You're not threatening. You're just, you're nothing. So,
or maybe she's just turned on to guys who dress up like Stewie from Family Guy.
She could have a Stewie fetish, actually.
Yeah. Well, she certainly is a step up from that little green Furby he was crushing on in the first episode. So if anything has happened to make these characters grow and evolve, at least Neel has picked up some better taste in women. Maybe I don't know. Not to say there's anything wrong with the Furby.
Right. But yeah, I mean, between the two. Okay, we got another caller here. Actually, you know what? Before we caller, just stay on the line. Let's do a couple of super chats so we don't get too behind. Here's Turtle Wars. We talked about him. Turtle Wars said, yeah, the most interesting thing to me from this episode is that Hannah's... Now, Turtle Wars, we know the most interesting thing to you in this episode was the antlers on the Eopie. So don't make it like it was something else. We know what your real interests lie. But the second most interesting thing to Turtle Wars was that Hannah's accent sounded a lot like Ayla Sakura's. And that the Eopies have horns. Okay, fine. We'll give you both. So thank you, Turtle Wars, for that. And you're always being here and supporting the live after shows. Appreciate it. Yeah, the accent, very franche and very reminiscent of the clan. What was the family name? The
Syndulla.
The Syndullas, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Tanya says, does Neel have a mouth? I don't see a mouth moving when he speaks. What's up with that? Yeah, he has a mouth. It's under the trunk. He speaks very clearly, considering that his mouth is obscured by that trunk flopped over it.
It's amazing.
But, they adapt. They figure it out.
It's amazing. Absolutely. Well, we saw him eating that slop. A couple of times, I think we've seen him eating slop. Oh, he passed the slop over to those kids.
I don't remember seeing him eat. Have we seen him eat?
Yes. When Jod gave them his food, he was eating, and they were all looking at him. He said, "There's more in the pot," and then they were all eating.
Or does he pick the food out with his trunk, and does it come up under the mouth like a dog?
Yeah. We're gonna have to freeze frame that moment from the episode.
Here's Rich Brendel. Rich says, new Patreon exclusive, Star Wars Methane. Jimmy Mack and Baby Belushi analyze farts in Star Wars. I think we've only been treated to one official Star Wars fart. Now, Rich might be remembering that there was the possibility in the lead up to Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, there was a leak that Yoda was going to escape Kashyyyk by acting like a little monkey and running up on Chewbacca and farting.
Yeah. He wanted to come off looking like some senile, crazy little creature so the clone troopers wouldn't bother with him.
Yeah.
But, I wonder, there must be some animatics of that, maybe some concept art. Probably
Concept
had
fart?
Ben back in the studio, Ben Burt back in the studio. There's the one.
Ben's like, hey, I got the sound effect ready to go. Now, here's the question. Would a Yoda fart and an Eopie fart be the same? I can't imagine.
And does Yoda fart like he talks in reverse?
Boy, I wish
maybe
I had
he
a
farts
button.
out of his mouth.
I
don't know.
wish I had a button that would play the fart sound backwards. I don't. So we don't know what the Yoda fart would be like. I am rolling says, can't say I remember no At Gassin.
At Gaston. That's a good one. I think all the At planets begin with the letter A. So At Attin might be one.
Yeah, that was a suggestion earlier. We got Majin Bryn says, chut from Hobbiton, guys. I'm assuming you're a Kiwi from New Zealand. If that's what I consider Hobbiton.
Or a Hobbit from Hobbiton.
We could take it literally. Just want to say I'm loving Skeleton Crew and as always, loving the after shows. Great fart analysis. High ground. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Scott St. Louis says, with family out tonight, missing you guys. Barf forever. Barf forever. And then he repeats.
I've had some weekends where it certainly seemed that way.
So with family. So if you're wondering where the Barf group is, they are their leader, Scott St. Louis, is not available because he's hanging out with the family. That's what happens this holiday season. Well, we're with you in spirit, okay? So you can rewatch the replay or download the podcast. Adam says, I'm enjoying the Space Goonies. Kids and all, it's a refreshing change from the usual Star Wars lore. Same reason I loved Andor. Jedi with sabers are great, but this can be fun too. Merry Christmas all. Thank you, Adam. Fun. Love the avatar. Love the lizard with the lightsaber and the cloak. Cool stuff. Yeah, Jedi and sabers are great, but why not have something else, right, Jim? It's a big universe.
I don't know. I think Star Wars needs lightsabers. I think Star Wars needs Jedi. I think Star Wars needs Sith. I hear people complaining about them going to the well too many times with that stuff, but that's the essence of Star Wars. That stuff's at its core. And just because I still appreciate it and want to see it doesn't mean that these guys know what they're doing in the writer's room. So they don't know what to do with Star Wars. That's why they're desperately trying all of these different varieties, because they don't know what to do with Star Wars. Well, it has to be influenced by the Goonies. It has to be influenced by Kurosawa. No. This is the year 2024. Make Star Wars that's inspired by Star Wars. I don't see why that's such a hard concept for people to understand. And I'm not talking specifically about the guy, and I get what he's saying. He likes to get some variety with the storytelling and all of that. But I think doing Star Wars shows that really don't have anything to do with Star Wars is a giant cop-out from Kathy Kennedy, Dave Filoni, and the entire Lucasfilm team. And Disney, too. They should know better. But they're trying to figure it out still. Here we are, more than 12 years after they acquired the franchise. And they're still just feeling around in the dark, trying to grab anything. Make Star Wars, for crying out loud. I don't need Goonies. I don't need any of the High Republic. At least High Republic is an attempt to stay within the universe. But I don't know, man. I don't understand why they don't just refresh everything and start new with something that's firmly steeped in Star Wars and the galactic conflict. Somebody online was saying the thing that really is kind of set Star Wars back was their decision to make Luke's Jedi Academy a failure. Because if it was a success, think of all the characters that could be mined from that Jedi Academy.
Yeah.
But they made it. They tried to they turned it into a failure. Everything post the original trilogy is a failure.
Right. The marriage of Leia and Han Solo. Mm-hmm. Han Solo as a father. Luke Skywalker, right, and the Jedi. Everything, you're right. They neutered themselves from being able to fill in any of those gaps, because who wants to see a bunch of sad sack failures? Do you really want to see the marriage between Leia and Han crumble? Do you really want to see Han be a deadbeat dad? Do you want to see Luke just fall and spiral into depression? No one wants to see those stories.
And look where the franchise is left at now. It's been gutted. It's been absolutely gutted.
So they have to work around some of what should be some of the most fertile years of the Star Wars that we know and love. They have to work around it and work beyond it. Yeah, no, great point.
Now general audiences are just apathetic about. I mean, nobody's watching Skeleton Crew, even with Jude Law. I thought Jude Law for sure would sell this show, but the numbers are abysmal. Nobody is watching Skeleton Crew other than us hardcore fans.
Yeah.
So that tells you all the decisions made over the last 12 years have been the wrong decisions.
Indeed. N64 Rescue says, well, RFR fuels my fandom. Thank you both for everything. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Geez, look at us. We've gone well over a couple of hours. I think we probably should wrap things up here on the show. It's been fantastic hanging out with everybody. We really appreciate all of the super chats, the calls. You say that we help or we fuel your fandom. You fuel our fandom because let's just like the theories that we heard a little bit ago. I mean, you guys add a whole lot to certainly the way I look at these shows, and I just can't wait every week to hang out with you all, hear what you're thinking, hear what Jimmy Mac's thinking, and to hear what this guy's thinking, Tyler Page.
Hey,
Tyler, our call screener, our official program observer, some mixed reviews this week on Skeleton Crew episode 4. Anything we didn't get to? What were your thoughts about this week's episode?
I liked the episode quite. It wasn't as good as some of the others, but I liked it a lot. Thought it was a very Neel-focused episode, and that had a lot of conflict and growth for him. I liked that it showed the inequality in comparison to At Attin. And there were two really good caller notes that I wrote down. One was kind of funny. I don't know why that girl had the French accent, and someone compared her to that character Zimol in the South Park movie, the one who's always smoking cigarettes and he sneaks them in. I can't remember exactly why, but he was a spy and he had a French accent. So that was good. And then the other caller note was just that Akron interacts with off-worlders. That's stated in dialogue, and that they trade, and that's different than At Attin. There's so many questions I have. Why were the coordinates written down? Who did the captain really destroy them? Just a lot of mystery, so I'm hoping to get some resolution there.
While you bring that up, something that I was waiting to see, if you recall, the reason or the way that Kim was able to finally get those coordinates to At Akron was because of the symbol that was on Fern's jacket or her backpack. I expected to see one of those two tribes with that symbol. I expected that symbol to show up on At Akron because it was the clue that led them there. Now, you could also say, well, that was the clue that led Kim to the coordinates of the real At Attin, but maybe this was the place that she sent them deliberately so that Jod wouldn't be able to get his hooks onto the treasure or whatever it is he's after on At Attin. I don't know. I was expecting that thread to be closed up. Good thoughts.
I feel like this world is part of the barrier, or just part of the plan to hide At Attin, but I don't know. We'll find out more.
Awesome. All right, Ty. Thanks, buddy. Love having you here. Appreciate all your hard work and helping us out. Jimmy Mac, final thoughts, episode 4.
Can't say I remember no At Attin.
I can arg. Okay. It was a good. I like the parts when they got into that tower and started to open our eyes to what's really going on in that system with those planets and the carbon copy nature of At Akron compared to At Attin. I think is really some compelling breadcrumbs to lay on the trail for us. And I enjoyed the character development in this episode too, specifically with Neel. Neel standing up a little bit more. He is the one who got SM-33 to, he distracted them, it distracted the droid as he was getting ready to hit the kids or tear the kids apart, as he said he was going to do. So it was nice to see Neel sort of step up. And as they were walking into that battle that never happened, he did go in front and was leading the group. And He was talking to himself to keep himself company, and but he was getting sort of lost in the moment too. And I think he was learning a little something about himself and how far he can push his own limits. And I think that'll pay off. I think the kids training with the weapons, I thought that was going to be a big payoff when it came to the battle, but the battle never happened. And I'm not really sure if the kids training was ever fully completed. It seemed like they started goofing off, and then Hannah and Neel went out and started walking around the encampment and things like that. So I thought that they were laying the groundwork for these kids to develop into legitimately good warriors, but we didn't quite see it. I'm pretty sure we will start seeing some legitimate battles on At Attin, because this giant laser cannon exists. And again, they're not going to show us that cannon unless they're going to use it. So we know the fight is ongoing on At Attin. They have to fight for food. They have to fight for friends. They have to fight for everything. Also, when they were training with the weapons, it was revealed that KB is a good shot, but she gets very easily confused when you approach her with a high five. She doesn't know quite how to react to that. I thought, the kids all growing up in the same area would understand similar gestures, but maybe KB is too much, I don't know. She's too much of her mind doesn't work that way. She doesn't play like other kids play. She doesn't express herself like the other kids do. That seems kind of foreign to her. Maybe because of the cybernetic attachments to her head. I thought it was interesting to learn about the fact that the captain killed his crew, which means, this whole idea of treasure being on At Attin is starting to become more and more reality based on the information we're getting in these episodes. At first, it was sort of a myth. The planet wasn't even supposed to really exist, and we learned that it does, and that it's the home to some vast treasure that the kids know nothing about. But with the pirate taking those steps to keep the secret to himself, tells you there actually is treasure on At Attin, and we will see it. Ryan Reeves in the chat said this will be known as the Ohio episode, At Attin. And he says the Troika was an old school gondola ride from Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio. Jason, is that an amusement park?
Oh,
you
yeah.
ever went to Cedar Point?
Absolutely.
Did you ever ride
many
the
times.
Troika?
No, I don't ride roller coasters.
Okay. Yeah, who am I talking to? Hello? I think Hannah will actually end up joining the gang at some point. Maybe next episode or maybe toward the end. Did you notice when Jod and General Strix met each other, they did that handshake where they grabbed the forearms instead of shaking by the hands? They grab each other by the forearms and shake. So I was like, what? That's in Star Wars now? And I wondered where it came from. So I did some research and I discovered that handshake started to appear in certain stage productions of Shakespeare's Julius Caesar back in like the late 1800s. And it was something that was kind of referenced to occasionally in Shakespeare, but it became super popular, apparently, via the show from 2010 called Spartacus that was on the Starz Network. Apparently, every episode of that show, they were shaking hands by grabbing the forearms instead of shaking by the hands. So it's just something I never thought about before until I saw it in Star Wars, and then I was like, wait a second. I've never seen anybody shake forearms in Star Wars. What the hell? So then that led me down the rabbit hole. So if you were ever wondering why people are doing that sometimes on TV shows, that's why. You can thank Spartacus from the Starz Network, a show I never saw, 2010. Who's not in this episode? Hondo Onaka, not in this episode. That's who.
All right. We'll be back next week, the day after Christmas, right? December 26th. Is that when we're back?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we are back.
So we'll be back next Thursday, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. That's Boxing Day. For those of you in the UK, we don't really do the Boxing Day thing here in the United States. We'll be back looking at episode 5. It'll be a nice post-Christmas relaxing get-together. Can talk about all the great loot that we got for the holiday. We'll also have a regular Rebel Force Radio weekly podcast this week, and then that will wrap it up for a couple of weeks as the weekly podcast takes a couple of weeks off for the holidays. But don't worry, we'll be here. If there's a new episode of Skeleton Crew, the RFR after show, we'll be here to talk about it. Because otherwise, did it really happen? We're not here to talk about it. It really happened. RebelForceRadio.com. Check us out. You can find us on all the socials. But for you all, we're here on YouTube every week. We'll see you next time. For Rebel Force Radio, I'm Jason.
I'm Jimmy Mack.
And remember,
the Force will be with you, always.